Oh, hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to class.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. I already spoke at length.
Good evening, sir.
Never knew I was muted. Okay, all right. You're welcome, everyone. It's another day, the weekend. The weekend that hence the core instructional aspect of the associate stage of RPA. All right, so yes, today the testimony will be chiefly taking the class, and of course we have Julius Atagana here too. Okay, and we also have you. All right, so your interaction is required. While I expect, yes, I think in the testimony, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Okay, you're welcome so much. Yeah. Now, would you want us to use to continue with yesterday's project, or you have a dimension to which you want to approach today's class? What option do you want to go for?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where Mr. Julius stopped last class, but I think that's where we should continue from.
Okay, in that wise, I will. Okay, so then, Amarachi, you need to share your screen with us, and probably would use your what's it called now? You use your screen. Okay, while she directs us, I think the method of using another person's screen different from the instructor. Somehow, I think it seems okay because it levels everyone to the same pace. I think it has its own advantage in a way. All right, so we expect that this time around our system will cooperate, like there will be power supply and everything will go fine. Okay. All right, so we expect Amarachi's screen to be shared.
Okay, sir.
And also, let me add to this so that at some point, the testimony will be coming up with a portfolio. It's just there's a particular portfolio she needs to share with us in class. All right, so I wouldn't know when she would want to introduce that, since the steering of the class, of today's class, is with her, so she has the will to drive it anywhere she wants it to go. So she can decide to start off the class with that, or she may want to introduce it at some point or take it to the later end of today's class. Whichever way, everything is up to her. All right, so the testimony, you can anyhow you want to do it with respect to the portfolio. All right, I don't need to reintroduce her. I don't need to. She's been with us, so she's not new, and of course we know that she's is a member now. Okay, if she's a member of Grandida, then who are you? I mean, like people like Joe, Shale, Sylvester Motayo. Okay, so you are student. She is a member. I think let's put it that way, because definitely our levels, our own level, and that of Mr. Julius, they are definitely not. They are definitely not on the same page. All right. Okay, so they are already in the Grandida family, so they are members. All right. So she's a member of Grandida LLC, and she has things she's been doing, project herself, and Mr. Julius. I don't know when Mr. Julius is going to present that is. I don't want to poke nose. I don't want to. I don't want to poke nose. Okay, so let me leave it. Let me just talk about testimony. All right. So she will be sharing a particular portfolio with us and what she has done. So as need arises, so we may have to ask questions, but solely what the purpose of the sharing is to make us to see what is going on, to see that what we are doing here is it's real, and it's though sketchy, the real thing, of course, lies, and it's awaiting you at the orientation. All right, so any testimony, you have the floor. If the testimony has the floor, Amarachi, you have the screen.
Okay. Mr. Julius, I think you unmuted at the other meeting.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's still at the other meeting.
Okay, still the other meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
All right, don't mind me. I'm connected with two systems, so I was unmuted in the last meeting, thinking it's this one. So, unlike what we'll do, the testimony will be taking the floor as we have had. We'll still be working together to get that up. So, I think before we'll quickly bring the testimony in, we'll just have to complete the half part before lady testimony can ride on that, so that lady testimony will get the breadth of where we stopped yesterday. So Amarachi, your screen should be open. I think somebody also asked a question surrounding the postponed dates and as well as the deadline in the queue. So this might also be an avenue we'll just use to see how we can get that done. So Amarachi, if you're here, we need your screen, please. But if you're not, I think I'll just share my screen for only the deadline and postponed dates. We're waiting for you, Amarachi.
Okay, what?
Yes, sir. As usual, this ancient and modern is still coming up. So you can help us share your screen, maybe you resolve them. I can, you know.
Okay, let me see my files. I was running on other files on my system, so it means I'll just open a fresh one.
We can't hear you, sir.
Okay, yes, I'm bringing up my studio. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yesterday we did something. I think this was what we did. So yesterday we were just looking at the different states, things that makes up the ROE framework. Saying the ROE framework was based on the state machine, and there's on the state machine there's what we call the state and the finite, and we just did a loop around this. So with that, I'll just sorry, just a minute, please. Okay. Yes. Back to my studio. So I'll just quickly delete that. We have deleted that. So let me just bring in, I think my orchestrator should be off. So say we'll just create a queue, and let me create that queue, give it a name. Every other thing. And this is my queue as at this time. And if I check the transactions, it's showing nothing. So I'll just go to these and drag in my activity. I could drag in add queue here. So somebody was asking, I think they will read a file. Let me see, I think I have a short file we'll just read from. Let's see, I have one short file. We could just read this. Let me just take this as a sample data. Here we'll have high, low, or medium. Okay, this can be even our best file to read. So we could then make this file appear in priority. Let me also duplicate them. Okay, let's say these ones are okay. For 5. So the testimony might be using these for our case when we're using the ROE framework to draw data. And let's just say that's all I have. I do. I could also place deadline. And let's just say deadline. And let's take our deadline to be let me just leave it as no. You do that later. Okay, let's read that file. This file. I think I was supposed to copy this file. Come to my studio. Let me open the path so that I can create an Excel file there. Just give it a name, Q. And paste the file. So basically, this is what we have. So I'm going to be reading from this file. So let me just read the file, read range. Read range, and I'm going to read the file from where we store it. And I'm going to store it. I'm going to store it on a just table. Let us say Q items. Let us say Q. Items. That's the name of the table. All right, that's the name of the table. Then we say for each. This was what we did yesterday. So I'm just trying to quickly catch up since Amarachi's system wasn't on for us. Range for each row, and for the each row, I'm bringing that Q items as our data table, and for each row, I'm going to be adding this. Now, how do I get it to be normal? How do I get it to be low? How do I get it to be high? It then means that there's no way I could just come here and change it to high, low, or normal, even if I read it. Then we'll have to play a little trick around it. So in each row, I could have something called the if. So I can say if the row contains this row, there was the row there. So if this row, where is it low? If this row that has record level is high, I could even use switch. Please let me use switch so that it will be faster for me. Both can do the work, but I just want to switch. I don't want to use nested if statements. So let me use switch and say I'm going to be switching around the string, and the string is going to contain row that has this dot to string, and give me a switch. So the first word we are looking for should be high. Let me just copy it the way it is here. If it's high, do something. Then the next one is when it's low and medium, do other stuff. I don't even have medium here. Low and high. Okay, let me change some to medium here. Medium. Sorry. Okay, normal. So let me change it to normal. Change another one to normal. I think it's okay. So the next to this, so I'll just take normal. When it's normal, do something X. And when it's low, do something else. So what I'll do is I'm going to drag three add queues here into each of them. So this one will be, at this point, this state will be low state. Then let me make a copy, or let me drag another queue in for the normal. For this normal, or let's first of all fill it so that I'll just do copy paste. Okay. On this row, if it is low, this will be low. Queue name, let me get my queue name back from the orchestrator. I think I copied it just now. Queue name, and I'll paste my queue name in here. Then the next one is priority. Yes, we said low. What else again? The items we want to be adding. So the items we want to be adding is going to be the collections. Let me just take only 3 parts of that collections that I want to put. On the Excel, let's say we want to take the item number, the item name, and description. So let me assume this is what I want to take. Row of item number. So this will be item number. Item underscore number. Okay. Next one will be item underscore name. So let me just take only 3. The other one will be, let us say, office description. Underscore description. So these are the items we have. So I'll take this and say collection. So on the collection, I'm going to take the arguments. Let me even put the default value first. So I'm just trying to put the feet and the items that I'll be getting, name, and then the next one is description. Description. All right, I think that's all we just need to add. So what I did here is that when it's low, this add queue will select low for that and do that. So I'll just copy this and paste in the high in the normal. All I just need to do is to change this to normal and do the same thing to high. And all I need to do is high. So this is a little trick you can use to just say read the file and place them in their priority in the queue. So this is a dispatcher, and if I run this, it's supposed to read the files and go to my queue and populate them based on that. So let's run and see. Wow. Okay, my Excel file is open. Sorry, I'm always fond of this. Testimony can attest of that.
Yes.
Okay, I just run. RPA queue does not exist. Okay, where did I build the queue? The queue name does not exist. Sorry. Hope I'm using the right. Sorry, let me check. I have different is Grandida and my studio connected with the Grandida. All right, I should be able to get that. Okay. Okay, the queue is built on training. So let me run it against training. So actually I've added it. Don't mind my queue. I was running it against where I did not build the queue. So it's built on training because it's highlighted. So I just saw it there. So now I have this. So if I refresh and go to my view transaction, I should be able to see all of them with their priority stage here now. So this is how you add priority. Same way you can also do your deadlines and add your deadlines. Then I think what we'll just do, we want to test which one will come first. Now, if we run this, if I run it like 3 times, you see that it's going to skip some. Their states are all new. So let me just put one more dispatcher on the studio and prove that one. Then I think with that, I'll end that's all about of the queue. So we'll go back to the, all right, so let me just quickly do that. So I'll just open another sequence and just get transaction. Let's call this one get transaction. So all of these things you're saying are the basis of the ROE framework. Get transaction, get I use the get transaction item. I pass the queue name. So what's my queue name again? Queue name, where are you? All right. So if I, by default, when you use this get transaction, the stage change to process. Okay, so I'll just run this. If I run it like first time, we'll see what was actually done in our own. So let's go to the orchestrator and see which one was serviced or which one is in progress. Now, if we go down, we'll see that this one was the one that entered first. So it's the one that is going to be progress. Let's run it again and see whether it's this one or the next one or the next one, like what we said yesterday. So I think if I run it 3 times, you are going to take it from there on and prove your other findings. That's for the second time. So let's go back and refresh again. And if I refresh, it skipped the low, skipped the normal, and came to the next high. So in our mind, we already know that the next one is going to take is going to be this. So let me run that once more. And the process is complete. So when I go back again and look at my orchestrator, which one is actually getting, it skipped all of them and focused on the eyes. So by our presumption, the next one is going to be this, because this is the next one in the hierarchy of the priority. So I think that ends my take on this. So Lady Testimony, I think you can come up on stage while I shut the screen. Thank you. So the next one is now this normal. So that's how you can test all around that. I think I'll stop here with the orchestrator. Hello?
Hello.
Yes,
Okay.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Dr. Ebenezer.
Hello. So Lady Testimony, you will
Hello,
start
sir.
with demonstrating. You will start with demonstrating with the portfolio. Then before we go to the ROE framework proper.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I wanted to ask Doctor if it's only today for the RE framework. So I know how.
Yes, he said it's
So
only
I know
today.
if you can. Okay. So do I present
Yes.
the project?
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you
So it
want to go
won't
with the
take
ROE
time.
framework before the project? Okay.
No,
Anyone is
I'm
okay.
just saying if the project presentation will not take time.
Okay. So Mr. Mr. Ebenezer.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, so now still subject to, I think it's subject to discussion. Okay, of course, while I saw the pace about yesterday or since 2 days ago, so I was thinking this may actually have to go more hours. Thanks to Mr. Julius for reaching into even 11 p.m. until 11 p.m. yesterday. Okay, now today is meant to be the last day for the Harry framework, to take up the Harry framework, and I'm not sure if what is left, even if you are not going to take portfolio, I don't think the time that is on ground is going to be enough for that. All right, so while that is why that is on, I would simply want to push everything to your hands. You take the portfolio as suggested by Mr. Julius now, and when you have done that, then you take up the class. Whichever way you said there is a simple way of breaking things into like we discussed earlier. So if that is going to work,
Okay.
but let's do that. Or what do you think? Mr. Julius will not be around because I was proposing another time, even when I had not spoken to the class. So I already, but for some schedule, it will not be chanced. But if you
Okay.
have some other offerings you want to give to us, want to spare us, let us know. Thank you.
Okay. I was also considering, instead of letting Mrs. Amarachi share screen, I could use a project that I've already built now to explain it so that it takes less time. Because RE framework, in fact, if someone just wants to build RE framework, the project RE framework on his own, it can take a whole day. Yeah, or more. Because even the one I built, if I remember correctly, I think I used 2 days to build it.
Okay, that's to build. Not talk about explanation. When explanation is going to come to it. All right. So Joe is going to ask question. Matthew will ask question. Babalola will say no, I don't get that. And then Amarachi, if she decides to keep quiet, Adedigba will say okay, no, and that is going to extend it. Okay. All right. So, and suggest what do you? So
If the class will allow it, so I share my screen. I use a project that I've built, so we can see. We'll first see the process definition document of that project, so you know what we want to build. Then we'll now see the solution. with RE framework.
If you know it's going to deliver, because you have built it, they won't see the process. That's the challenge. Or do you want to take? Yeah.
Yes, they will see what they won't see is because what we actually want to explain is how the RE framework works. They will
Okay.
not see. Huh?
Okay. Let's go with that. Let's go with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see.
So to start with, I can start with my portfolio. So this is what I built. So it's basically I built it with UiPath apps, the apps feature on the orchestrator. So basically what it does is keeps records of the customers, maybe of a company, their employees. You can send emails to either the customers or employees. You can remove employees or customer. You can also add notes, enter transaction that was performed also. Sorry, and also search for a customer. When you search for a customer, you see the customer's details and the transactions performed by that customer. So that's basically what I did, and this is it. This is how it looks. So Mr. Gabriel wanted me to share it so that we can all see that there are bigger things that RPA can be used to build, or UiPath can be used to build. So if I want to add a new customer, all I have to do is just to click this and enter the customer's details here. And for example, let me search for a customer now. These are the customers in the database now. So if I search for, let's say, Tessie, and I search, it's going to bring out Tessie. Tessie did not enter any address. Tessie is a student at class, the email, gender, phone number. So if the only thing compulsory here when you want to register a customer is just a name. That's how I built it. So, and this is what Tessie has bought. So this is the transactions also. And I can click done after. I can also choose to send email to someone. So if let's say I want to send email to, let's say, Bam Theodore, and I can, there's also a functionality to store templates of email. So I have this here. So I can choose get well soon templates. And here I'll see that it will be populated here. So sending prayers, this is the subject. Hi, this is the body. I can see someone, or this is someone, and drop file to upload. So what happens is everything is built with your iPad apps. But now to send the email, there's a process. This is the process I built, send email _ds. So that when I click send, this process to be in a way triggered to run. And then email is going to be sent to that person. So yeah, and what else can I do? I can choose to add a new class of customers. So this is something that I don't know if companies need, but I just added this. And I can choose to that because the database has the customers information, employees information, transactions are stored on UiPath data service. So let me see. Here, this is your impact. Right? So to actually, I don't know if you will be able to see data service in your own orchestrator, because to enable to access it, you need to go and enable it in your tenants. So because I've already enabled it, I can access it. So all I just need to do is go to more and click data service. And if you click data service, you see some entities, which is because I'm using Academic Alliance, is also limited in a way that
particular number of items I can add to the entities. So I created entities for each of customers, employees, the transactions, and so on. So this is it. So let's say I open customers now. So this is where it's stored basically, and this is the data. So Frankenstein, Sheon, and all these people that you saw in the app here. In the app. So it's stored. So now but the customer will most likely not want to go to UiPath Orchestrator. Might not even know that this exists. So instead of going here to view the documents, if maybe the person wants a more what I say, comprehensive view of the customers, employees, and everything, can just click download sheets here. And when that is clicked, the download sheets process runs. So these are the two processes that this whole app uses. The remaining is just using data service entities and some functions in the UiPath app to sort through. Then after building it, to make it an executable, I used Electron to build it, or to make it into an executable that can be run on desktop, Windows desktop PC. So that's that about the portfolio. Does anybody have any question?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay. Is it Sheon or Emmanuel?
Sheon to have a question.
Okay.
I think Emmanuel is talking.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Emmanuel. Okay, hello.
Hello, can I go on with my own question?
Yes.
Okay. You were saying you will need to enable I don't know what you said we need to enable. So I want to know the books. So how do we enable that data service?
So you go to tenants.
Maybe you can put us through. Let me see. Share your screen and let's see. Okay, straight so. Go to tenants.
I have some very special flowers over in my garden.
Okay. So when you get to Orchestrator, you go to tenants.
Wow, look at these flowers. They're super springtastic. What kind are they? They're all wind flowers.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So you can see some others, you can see some tabs there. You can see robot and other things. So let me see. I'm looking for admin. Okay. Okay, this is admin here. So click on more and go to admin. Click on more and go to admin. So I want to take tenants tab on the admin. So while it's loading.
Hello, good evening, testimony.
Good evening.
Yeah, please. Did you say something like you're going to drop the problem statement of this the project?
Problem statement.
That's the how do I put it? The document or that's
Is
yeah.
it for the RE framework?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I can drop it.
Like the question, kind of like the
Yeah,
question,
I can
so
do that.
one can implement it too.
Okay, I will do that.
Right. Okay.
I will do that.
On the Telegram. Okay.
No, I think I can drop it on the chat here.
Okay, all right.
I will drop it on here. Okay, so as I was saying, we go to the tenant. Now this is the tenant I have. Just let's see here. So it's just let's see here that I have. I can see data service is already enabled. So So let's see. To do that, what you need to just
Okay, I said that's how to enable data.
No, to do that, after you get to admin tab on the tenants, you click on tenant setting. But for my own, it's already enabled.
Enable tenant settings.
Yes.
Okay.
So then you will see the available services. So it's only test manager that is available. But since, for example, for you, you won't have enabled data service. So you see data service and you just click it and click save.
Data service.
Yes, data service. Yes, data service.
Okay. So when I enable
it?
that, yeah, I get it. I've written the steps. So when you enable that data services, so what? What is the work of data services in the orchestration of the tenant? In the tenant orchestration.
Yeah. So it stores data. So if I go to the data service now, you see it can store Boolean, it can store files, it can store text, dates, another
It can
variables.
store all types of data types, right?
No, not all types. But like this is the type it can store. It can store text, number, yes or no. Yes. These are the types it can store and a file.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any question? Any other question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Hello.
Can I go ahead?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, you can.
Okay. The GUI graphic user interface that display in the project description. How is it? Did you created it or you get it from click or drag activity?
Okay. So to do that, you just go to UiPath apps. So this is apps here. So this is apps. On the orchestrator, you see apps and you click it. Then you can build, if you've not used it before, you just click build a new app. But I have already built one and this is it, company shell for DS. So you just click build new app. Then you can just drag and drop activities, basically. Not activities, controls here. So this is it. You just see the way they are. So there are different pages here. I have about 16 or so pages. So after clicking add new customer, what happens is this one opens, this page opens, and so on. So it's still loading. There are many other pages here. And when you click buttons here on the main page is what opens first. When you click some buttons, you will tie those buttons to some pages. Like if I click add new customer and I go to events, I click on edit rule, I can see that when it is clicked, what happens? This add new customer page is supposed to happen. And that is how I did it for all other buttons here. That's it.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, please, I would also like to.
Hello.
I also have a question.
Okay.
All right, mine is to ask if the orientation stage that you people are presently, if it is also a kind of training session, or I don't know the where you got the knowledge for this. Is it from the kind of training we are also having now, or maybe they are still teaching you some other things at the orientation stage?
Okay. I don't know if Mr. Julius wants to answer.
Hello.
Hello,
Yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, sir.
So on that question, yes. But this time we're facing, like I said, I think this question came one time and we talked about facing a real world problem. What you are having is just the basics here now. By the time you come, you'll be given challenges to conquer. And because you are now a full-fledged developer at that point, you have to dig deep, be on forums and questions and answers. This will also broaden you. So this is the first level you are. We are waiting for you to come over so you can get acquainted to the real world problems and try to solve them. So your skills on solving them makes you a better developer.
Okay, thank you.
Hello.
Thank
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Good evening.
Uh,
Uh, I'm also. I don't think. I'm not very clear with that answer for the question he asked. The question he asked was that are there any training, like even
Let
if
me
it's real world project, do you people have like session whereby you are trained on some things? That's I think
First of
sorry.
all,
I
you need to
Let,
understand the
get him.
concept of
let,
training.
let me come in. Let me say something. Hello? Hello?
Hello, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, the response Mr. Julius gave you, it simply borders on self-development. I think that I would just like to summarize it that way. Okay. The fear right now is, oh, this thing, is it that the curriculum we are going through is different from what the one they went through? Is it different from what we are going through? That because I think that is the fear, and that is the fear that is propelling that question. All right. Okay, now to pass your exams, you have to go through the curriculum to get certified, but you cannot relent on that to operate. That's so everything now borders on self-development. I think, except if I don't know the direction Mr. Julius is attempting to look to tackle that question. All right. Thank you.
So in addition to what Mr. Ebenezer just said, training is not only when somebody comes to meet you and start telling you do this, do that. Training can be faced with, you may be faced with difficult problem and you do research to get how you solve those problems. That should also bring a knowledge into you, and that is part of the training. So when we say reward problem, you'll be given challenges to face. How you get those solutions to solve it is also part of your training techniques. So if you are involving training, training can be everywhere. You can get your training online. You can get it from forums where you ask your questions. And I think that's what you need. So don't think this basis you are getting is what is enough for you to solve real life problem. We just wanted you to get your certification, then you can then exploit the knowledge that is everywhere to solve man's real problem.
Thank you very much, Mr. Julius. You know, I'm very much impressed with what I think testimony just shared, and it has opened my eye to see how wide or how deep the RPA can be. So I know that okay, it has also developed my interest more on it because why me my own side of the question, what I want to get from the question is if not as if I'm afraid if there's no training, there's no, but I just want to know that there's going to be kind of mentorship. Okay, do this at this point, you will do and submit and all of that, and then somebody will be there to look at it. I say, oh, okay, good. Okay, you've not done well and stuff like that. That's all I'm
Okay,
trying to
yes.
get.
Okay, yes, you have those that will give you the challenges and also give you idea how you may be able to solve it. Yes, you have those there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Shewojo is still raising his hands. He has asked, I don't know if he forgot to lower his hands. So, testimony, you still have.
I want to ask, I want to ask Mr. Julius or Mr. I want to ask him some question pertaining to UI orchestrator. Yes, sir. Are you there? Hello?
Oh, yes, I am.
Hello, Mr. Okay. You made mention of the spatial and performer yesterday.
Okay.
I mean, so I forgot the major meaning that you really said. So my question goes like this: what is a dispatcher and a performer, and the difference between both?
Okay. We
Difference
just
between
did.
dispatcher and
Okay, good. When we just entered the class just now, I conclude.
sir.
I Hello. When we entered the class, I don't know whether you joined us earlier on. I started by showing us.
You made mention of it. It didn't
Oh,
stick. It didn't stick. It didn't stick
yes. No,
into
no. Don't
my
worry.
mind.
Don't worry.
You
I'm
just
trying to
mentioned
go somewhere.
performer is for reading. You said performer is for reading some blah blah blah, and then you said dispatcher is for
don't.
getting.
Sorry. Don't miss it. Don't worry. I'm going
So
somewhere.
I don't want
Yes.
to
Don't
know.
miss it. I'm going somewhere. I started by showing us the studio, and I developed two things, and I created a workflow, two different workflow. One of them is supposed to be dispatcher, and the other one is supposed to be performance. What does dispatcher do? Dispatcher simply just gets data or reads data and push them to the orchestrator queue. Gets this data from any source, could be from database, from Excel, reads them and save them in the queue. That's the function of a dispatcher. Now, when it saves them in that queue, it's expected that when you want to start processing this transaction, let me share my screen a bit. When you want to start processing this transaction, you will
Okay.
need them. You will need them from where it is stored.
Yeah.
If you are not, Mr. Julius,
Hello.
if Mr. Julius, if you are not careful, we will not leave dispatcher and performer.
Yes, I just want
Ah,
to show them I'm not doing anything more. So when I pushed the data came here. But when I wanted to start using them, like get data and process them, I created another workflow. So that workflow is usually performance. It gets the data from the queue and carry out
Push.
transaction around it. So that's the difference
So
between dispatcher and the performance. I think that's
so
all.
so in a nutshell, you are saying now dispatcher is for getting data, right?
Reading data and pushing to the queue.
Reading data and pushing data.
Sorry, the class ought to go on. Maybe this your question can come outside the class.
No. It's not a question. I just need a cogent point because that is I've gone through
Eh,
series of text
That is why I said
practice.
yes. That's why I said
There's no
maybe
story. They
you
don't.
ask
There's no
later.
story in those things. They just need cogent points. You just give them A, B or C answer. So that I just want to know. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Uh-huh.
So I think, lady testimony, you can continue if there's no question.
Okay. So I sent the doc.
Sorry, Lady Tessie. I'm sorry. I have some question for you, ma. Uh, ma,
Okay.
sorry, Miss Tessie. That's your application that you build.
Okay.
Is that the only app we can build inside our cloud, say cloud forum? I mean cloud account forum, or I can see you created that from app inside the web application of Orchestrator. Is
I
that the
don't.
only
What
app?
do you mean by? Is that the only
Is
app
that
we can
the only
build?
app you can build with that? You guys can see you can build a new app. Build. You show us how to build a new app.
Yeah. If you build a
This
new
one.
app, you will get a just the empty template. There will be only one page. You are the one that will populate the app with
Okay.
more pages and more
So,
functionalities.
thank you. Thank you. So, how many templates? Is there different types of templates on it,
Okay,
or
now
we create our own?
let me come. Please excuse me. Now,
Okay.
please, every question on the app should be suspended until maybe after the class or after this class. Reason the Harry framework they are going to take us is seriously important. As in seriously important to question to what we want to do here. The question on app, the template, number of templates. I tell you all these things you can explore. You already see and have the link. So I would want to so that you can manage time. Already time is not in our favor. And if we I can release the class to go the way it wants, but I feel I should not. Questions on app and this and let us move into it. Not know where that noise is coming from. So I don't want to ask if that is okay by us. That's my usual practice to ask if it's okay by us, but I would have to take up that role right now. All right, so testimony, please.
Okay. So I've sent the documents that we're going to use to the Telegram chat. So before we start, we can first talk about what RE framework is. So RE framework is like a template that has been given by UiPath to design, let's say, complex projects. Because if, for example, you want to just go to Excel and read a file, and then if the file is greater than something, then you want to output a message box. Then if using RE framework, just take a lot of your time because RE framework is complex and it's designed so that you can effectively log errors or events and also follow best practices also. So it's used for complex projects. So let me see. Yes, this is from UiPath exactly. So this is the process definition document for the project that I have built already. So it's documenting it's just like the question basically, what you have to build. And if you take the academic course, it's the advanced. Is it the advanced? I don't know. Maybe they actually took the advanced. It's part of one of the prerequisites to get the certificate in the academic course. You have to complete two projects, and this is one of them. So this is what we are basically to do. We are to log into this website called ACME System 1 Web Application, then access word listing item on the dashboard, select an activity of this type, W15, select client details on the details page, open sha1.com website and enter the correct formula using client ID, name and country. Retrieve client security hash from the website, go back to the work item details and open the update work item, set the status to completed and add the security hash info. So you can see this is a pretty complex project. So and to do this, we should use the RE framework. And in this PDD, this is what we're given. They've already defined the steps to follow. So these are the steps, which is open this and this particular step. So I just want to use this process or the templates I've already built to show you not how to build this, not how to open the ACM system, one web application, or to log in, or to get the activities, or no, but to show you how the RE framework is, how it's all interconnected, and why RE framework should be used. And after I'll run it again after just so we can see it. I don't think it
Sorry,
will get.
excuse me. Sorry, do you say
Yes.
the project is part of the requirements for what?
Not for you, not for the certificate one, not for what is it now? Not for UiPath certificate associate and advanced, but for the academic course, there's a UiPath academic course. It's not relevant to the certificate exam that you are taking. So this is
all right.
the yeah. Okay, so if you want to first of all build RPA framework, what you need to do is just after opening Studio, you click Robotic Enterprise Framework to create the RPA framework. And after, what to open is I'm going to get exactly this. This is how it's going to look. This, okay, let me just open one just so you can see that exactly this that we're going to get. So just a new one. So yeah, so this is what you have when you open it. Let me enlarge it. So you have this, you have there are 4 states, right? We have the initialization, get from the initialization, get transaction data, process transaction, and end transaction. So in the initialization, they've already written what it does. It reads config file, which let me show you where it is. Let me use the new one we just created. What's it? Is this? So we can get the config file here. So it's an Excel file. So we use it to store maybe paths to some files that you want to use, skills that you want to maybe read from, or if you want to read from Excel, you guys store the name of credentials that you stored. Basically, just to store configurations, meaning things that you can change. For example, let's say I store the path to the queue. Let's say I store the queue as the path to the queue as Q. Okay, let me open it up just so you can see. So then, and let's say I now change the queue some other time, instead of going to the project and now changing the queue, every place I use, instead of changing it, I can just come to this config.xlsx and change it. So look at it here, orchestrator queue name is the name. That is what is used. And then I'll just change it here in the value. Let's say it changes from process ABC queue to something else. Then I can change it. So we have settings here, which is holding the queue name, queue folder, what's it called? Process name also. And we have constants. Constant is holding exactly what it said, constants. The maximum try number. It's part to where the screenshots, like if there's an error, it takes a screenshot of these exceptions. So this is the part where you should save it. We have basically other constants also. Like you can also add your own. Maybe you want to add the maximum, say a threshold to the project you are building. You can just come and save it and type max threshold and set it to 5, for example. And if it changes from 5 to let's say 7, instead of going to the project, you don't even have to open it. You just have to change it in the config.xlsx file. And then we have assets, is to store assets. and that is the config. So it's just to store configurations, basically. That's the config. And remember, we came to check this because we were talking about initialization states. So this is where the config file is read. It is only read once, and it gets all the, so it's not something that it reads maybe every time the process. No, it's every time the process runs, it's going to read the configuration file. But let's say I want to read from an Excel file, and there are 100 rules there. It will not read the configuration file for each of those rules. For each time it goes to read those rules, or for each time it just goes to do anything. It will just read it once, and then the other remaining part of the process can be run, which is the get transaction data, process, and end process. And it also inits, it used to init, okay, let's open it to initialize applications. Say maybe you want to deal with Chrome, for example. So this is where you open Chrome. So let's go there and just see what is there. Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we
we are
can.
with you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Please give me a minute. Sorry. I want to get something. Please give me a minute.
Hello. Okay. While we're waiting for her for a minute, I think somebody will have to share a system so that we can just be using the system pending when she comes. Hello. Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, I needed a system, volunteer system. You know, I don't usually use my system for training. I'll need somebody to be doing the training while I'm talking.
Okay. I'm back, Mr. Julius.
Hello.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello,
Thank
lady
you.
testimony. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, that Excel file. What is that Q folder about? What is it about? I know Q name.
What
The
is
Q
what?
name.
I
The
did not
Q
hear you. What
folder.
is what?
Q folder in that Excel
Uh,
file.
The
wait.
queue
I
in
don't.
the config file is asking that
Yes.
the queue
Okay.
name, the process ABC
Okay.
queue, how does it relate to to the queue that we are using in orchestrator? How does it read it? I think that's the question it's asking.
Yeah. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
just if it's when Mr. Julius share the screen, show different folders. So it's just the folder that the queue is in.
Okay.
All right. See in the configuration file she's showing you doesn't mean that you are going to utilize all activity. Like she said, you can actually change those settings and put your settings. You could change the retry numbers. Whatever things that is there is not cast on stone. It's a template that you should follow. You could even remove the orchestrator queue name completely and say your template, you will not use orchestrator, you want to use a table. All of these things you can do. So don't allow that to be something that you think you must know all of them.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. So most of the things in the config file, we don't use it. Just in case it needs to be used. So this is the initialization. I've opened it. This is the main, and then I opened the initialization. So this is what happens. So the first thing is, it is put in this initialization is put in a try catch in case something happens during initialization. And then what happens is if there's an error during initialization, we assign this variable
I'm not seeing
system.
your screen. Am I the only one?
We can see it. We can see it.
You can see the
Okay.
screen.
Oh, okay. I can see it now.
Okay. So we assign exception or the exception to this system exception. So that's if there's an error during the what's it now? The initialization stage. And in the initialization stage, what happens is that first of all, remember the system exception variable that we just saw, first assign it to nothing. So when it first runs, when the initialization runs, we just ensure that okay, there's no exception, there's nothing in system exception. System exception is carrying nothing. So that if there is an exception, it is going to be stored there, and if there is none, we want to ensure that system exception is empty, nothing is there. So this is now saying, let me close this, that if this is the first time we're running this process, because it's not only during when we first run it that the initialization will run. Some things can happen during the process running that we have to go back to init. For example, let's say system exception occurs, we have to go back to init. So this is not say, because remember I told that config.xlsx file that we opened is only run once, and that is to show that if config is the dictionary that the Excel that we've read, where it is stored. It's stored in a dictionary. For example, we're also orchestrator queue name. So it will be orchestrator queue name and the name of the queue. Then another one will be stored. Let's say a constant max retry number will be stored with the maximum, let's say 2, and so on. So it's
You're breaking up. Testimony, you are breaking up. We are not hearing you.
hello.
Yes,
Hello.
we can. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sorry, I got disconnected.
Okay.
Okay, so I was saying config just runs once. I mean, the configuration file is just read once and it is read into a dictionary. So it says, this is a log message, just outputting the, let me see, the screen resolution. Then this is the first thing that happens when this is the first run. So first of all, the init all settings workflow runs. Let's open the workflow and see what happens. So in the init all settings, if you read what is written, it says initialize, populate, and output a configuration dictionary to be used throughout the project. Settings and constants are read from the local configuration file that we saw as sheet name in the configuration file. And assets are also fetched from orchestrator. Asset values override settings and constant values if they are the same defined. Excuse me, with the same name. So then we log message. This is someone saying something.
No.
Okay, so this is the first thing that happens, a log message. Then we assign, because when you want to define a dictionary or list, we have to say new, if it's list, new list of string dictionary, new dictionary of string comma object, or if it's string and string comma string, and so on. So we are initializing the dictionary. Then after that, we now read the configuration file. So say for each sheet in config sheet, what is in config sheet? In config sheet is settings and constants. We are reading settings and constants. So for each sheet, that's if the sheet is settings. Remember we saw 3 sheets. We saw settings, constants, and is it assets? Yes, assets. So this is reading the settings and constants sheets.
So you can see this is the first one. Let's say it's reading, because settings comes before constant text, so it's going to read settings first, then to read settings into in config file, and for each row in this DT settings and constant, which is the data table that this is stored. Let's confirm. Yeah, DT settings and constants for each there. What we do is then we add it to the dictionary. We add each row to the dictionary. So you can see if the row is not empty, meaning there are some, remember I said it's not every part of the configuration file that we have to fill. So let's say we left orchestrator asset name, orchestrator queue name, orchestrator queue folder. Let's say we are not using queue, for example. I want to use maybe Excel. We leave it empty. It's not going to read it and add it to the config, the dictionary. It only be added to out config only if and only if it is not empty. So all these things are not things you change. That's why it's a template. If I want to do this, I want to build a project, I'm not going to come and change anything here because I want the config file to be read. So this is something that won't come to change. You just know that, okay, I just know that when I come to my main, this variable config here is storing everything that I've already inputted in the config.xlsx file. So you don't change anything here at all, unless you want to add something else, or you maybe you're not using config.xlsx to store your configurations, then you come and change the name. That's all you do. Then it also reads, this is now reading from the assets sheet. Remember here we've read the settings and constant here. Then here it will read from the assets and get orchestrator assets from the orchestrator. But if it's empty, it will not get it, because and you don't see if anything is empty here, because if an Excel sheet is empty, then there's nothing to
Sorry,
look
please, is it
through.
reading from the configuration file?
Huh? Is it what?
I said, is it reading the data table? Is it from the configuration file?
Yes. Remember there were 3 sheets in the configuration file: settings, constants, and assets. So it's reading from each sheet. Here we've read from settings and here we've read from settings and constants. So here we are now reading from assets sheets. So yes, it's reading from the configuration file. So when it reads the asset, it gets orchestrator assets if there is anything there, and assigns it again to the config dictionary. And yes, so that's what the init all settings does. So you can see that's all that is here. Then after the init all settings, let's go back. Remember we are talking about initialization. We've seen that the first thing is to read the config file. Then after that, if it says overwrite queue name from in configuration file in case the argument in orchestrator queue name is specified. Okay, this is empty. So if you want to, let's say you want to use a different queue name, you can just assign it from here. So let's see. So assign config blah 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 orchestrator queue name to in orchestrator queue name. So that's if you don't want to use, if you don't want to use the orchestrator queue name that is in the config file. So you come and define it here in orchestrator queue name yourself. But if you are using the one that is already from the config file, then the one that has been read in this init all settings workflow will be used. Same thing with folder, do the same thing. If you want to override it, same thing. Then we kill all processes. So let's open the kill all process workflow. So this kill all process workflow, this is something that you edit. You can see that it's empty. It just contains a log message. So in this project here, if you check, it says log into ACME. Okay, now we see that it's empty. Maybe what I should do is now go to the one that I've populated already and now check what is now there, what I've added there. Because here we need Chrome. I think we need Chrome, yes. So let me open the workflow and see what I added. So you can see, because I know I'm going to use an application called Chrome. So in case Chrome, a Chrome instance is already running, since I know I want to use Chrome, I'll first kill Chrome. So that's if you want to use, say maybe you want to use MS Word. What you do there is come here and add kill MS Word, kill all process. I mean, what's the activity? Kill process, and you kill MS Word process. You write the process name here. Then if you want to kill something else, you just bring in kill all process. It's an activity. You can just search it here. Kill process, and just drag it here. So if you want to use maybe 10 applications in your system, you just drag different 10 kill all process and kill them here. So just to get the system ready for the project. So that's what invoke kill all process workflow does. Then add log fields. So this is, let me see. To add a field, add business process log field. Let me open it. Don't know if anything will be added. Okay, this is log f business process. I assigning it to the business process name that has been specified in the config file. But this is in this client security hash. Let me open it. I didn't specify anything as a business process name, so nothing is going to be added. I didn't change anything there also. So we've talked about the init settings workflow. We've talked about adding queue name, overriding queue name, and killing the process, killing all processes that you want to use, and adding business. So after initializing, that's reading from the config file, clean all process, blah blah blah. Then we now go to the init all application workflow. Let me open it. So basically, now we now open all applications that I want to use now. After killing Chrome, for example. Now, okay, this is client security hash. Let me go back here and show you what it is like at the beginning. Sorry, let me just post this. Okay. Okay, this here is saying that if the maximum number of system exception was reached, let's say you run the initialization maybe like 3 times, right? And then you run the process, I mean 3 times, and you've already set the maximum consecutive system exceptions as, let's say, 3. That means if system exception happens 3 times consecutively, what happens? We go to the end process state. We will just end your process. That means it's most likely not going to work. Then after that, you come to the init all applications workflow that I was talking about here. So if you open it, you see that it's just empty, like the kill all process. But here I've already added what I need to initialize. So in this project, we are going to use Chrome because if you see, it says login to this. So example of initializing the process is not just opening Chrome alone, but actually, because it says login, that means I need a password and username. So I'll not just open the browser, I'll not just open the ACME system one website, but I'll also log in into it during this init all application workflow. So you see, I added this because for best practice, you can see it's only open applications that is here. But according to best practice, I added another log message to show that, okay, after this opening application, I'm opening the ACME website. Then this ACME login website is something that I've built. I'll just open the workflow, but we are not going to go deep into it. This website is just to open the ACME website, which has been stored here. And then, so let me open, just give me a minute, please. I want to open the config file of this one, so you can see what I stored there. Please, if I'm too fast though, tell me, sorry. Okay, so the maximum retry number is set here is 2. Then you can see in the settings folder, I stored the ACME URL. So the ACME URL here is now this URL. So this is what is actually going to be used here. This in-login URL is gotten from here, where we read the in-config file. The in-login URL was populated. So when I come here and I see the import arguments.
Sorry, please, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so is the config file a part of is it part of the templates? Like, does it come with the template?
Yes.
Okay.
It's part everything that we are basically discussing what the RE framework provides. So the config file is also part. As I was saying, you see, if you check here, you can see the name that I assigned to this ACME URL, to this URL is ACME underscore URL. And this is where I tagged it as in login URL. See, in config. This in config is the config file that was read. Then the name of this URL that I need is ACME URL. Then I convert it to string. Same thing with the login details. I store this in my Windows credential as ACME login details. So I just come here and say in config, then the name of the name I assigned to it in the settings sheet, then dot to string. So that is now what gets imported into the ACME login workflow. So you see, I just use that's instead of coming here to put ACME log, instead of putting this https dot dash dash dash, I will just put it here and then it's going to be populated inside my process. So that if this changes, I will not have to come here, open this template first of all, open this process first of all, go to main, then open ACME login, and now change it here. All I just need to do is change it here. So this is one of the advantages of RE framework. So basically, let me just say what this does. This opens the browser and gets secure credentials from Windows Credential Manager that I've already stored, and then it now logs into the site. That's what this process does. It's something. This one doesn't come with the framework, or it's something I built because remember we're in it all applications. So I have to add. Remember, this is how it is. It is just blank. So I'm adding all applications that I need to initialize, which is first of all to log in. And it's not only ACME system, one web application I'm to log into. If you read on, you see I'm also to go to shan1.com. So this is another application in quotes because we still know it's the same Chrome, but in a way it's another application I need to open. So I also have to open that. I also have to see. I used according to best practice. I first of all put a log message to show that I'm, going to SHA1 now, and I built a workflow. So I'm not doing anything. All it just needs to do is open. If you see it, I stored it here too. This is the SHA1 online URL. This is the URL, and it just opens it and leaves it blank. I'm going to use it later. It doesn't. If you go to this website, you will see that it does not require login. Let me copy it. NB Control V. Let me copy the other one. That one requires login. So you can see this is what opens. I don't need to log in. I just want to enter. This is as a result of the other processes I've run. I just need to enter something here, hash it, and something will be given out. Let me select this hash. This is what I need, basically. So I don't need login. But the other website, I need to log in. So this is it. I need to log in. So part of initall application is logging into the application. Okay.
So that's all for this init all applications, because I only need to, if we check the PDD, the two things is to log into ACME System 1 and open sha1.com. And then I get stuff from them. I don't need to open any other thing. So that's why that's just all for the init all applications. Now back to our main workflow that we are. Sorry. After we've read the config file, we've queued up processes, we've initialized all applications, then we are done with the initialization. We'll come and look at the states later. Let's first define each of the states. We'll come and look at the transitions later. I mean. So that's that about the initialization, basically. So it's to remember, see what they wrote here. So read configuration file and initialize applications, and that's what we did exactly inside this state. We read configuration file, we opened ACME login website, and we opened sha1.online website. Then the next state here is get transaction data. Let me close this. Should I close this? And now let's see the get transaction data. So what it actually said here was get the next transaction item to be processed. So if you are using a queue or you are using Excel file, it's just to get the next transaction item. So let me, this is white. Okay. So this is checking, the first thing here is checking for a stop signal, so that if in orchestrator you stop the job, because when you start a job you can also stop it. So this is another question that can come out, that when does the RE framework, or when does a process or project check for the stop signal from or which state does the RE framework check for the stop signal from the orchestrator? Is inside the get transaction data states. So that's one question that can come out. And if you read this, you can see that for get transaction data, what we do is to get the next transaction and retrieve a new transaction data to
Can you repeat that question?
Okay. If the question might say, in which state is the stop signal checked for from the orchestrator, something like that. I don't know if maybe doctor can refer or Mr. Jesus can say it better, but that's the way the question comes. That
Okay.
in what state is the stop signal checked for? It's in the get. So if you stop the process from, and it is in the process transaction state, it will keep on running until it gets to this get transaction data, where it will not check for that stop signal. And if the stop signal is true, right? If it's actually check signal, the signal is true, what it does is that it comes here. First of all, put log message as usual, because according to best practice, we have to put log message and tell whoever is debugging it what state it's in. Then we set transaction item to nothing. So remember, when it comes to get transaction data, what happens is that it comes here to get the next transaction. But if it's that, if a stop signal is requested or someone clicked stop, then the
We can't hear you. Testimony.
hello.
Yeah.
Hello?
Okay, we can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Sorry, I got disconnected for a bit.
So I was saying if the transaction item is not nothing, it goes to the process transaction state. But if it's nothing, it can only be nothing if all the transaction has been exhausted, or if a stop signal was requested, or a stop was clicked on the orchestrator. Then when it is nothing, it goes to the end process and it ends the process. So that is why this, when stop signal has been sent, what happens is we assign transaction item to nothing, so that instead of going to process transaction, it goes to end process and the process ends. So if no stop signal is requested for this, we now go to the main getting transaction. So, and what we do is, you can see that this isn't plenty. What we just do is we try to get, okay, let me use the empty one. So you see what is in the get transaction workflow at the beginning. So see, it says get a transaction item from a specified source. That is either orchestrator, queues, spreadsheets, databases, mailboxes, or web APIs. The ones that I've used is orchestrator, queues, and spreadsheets. That's Excel. So if there is no transaction item remaining, you can see how transaction item is set to nothing, which we saw, which leads to the end process state. For cases where there is only one single transaction, use an if activity to check whether the argument in number. This is saying that if it's just one item, let's say it's just one item, right? Or one thing that we are going to read from, we set the in transaction number to 1, and that means there's only one transaction. It's the first and only transaction. So that's to read one transaction. But if you're using RPA framework, then you most likely have multiple transactions to read from. So then you just leave the transaction number, which you'll be setting it. You'll be adding one to the transaction number. For example, let's say we're reading from Excel file, and the Excel file has 100 rows minus the is it header that is called? Minus the what's it called now? The header. Let's say you have 100 rows. Then after the first row has been processed, you add one, so that you know that when it comes here, you're going to read from the second row. That's in the process transaction state. You add one. Then when it comes to get transaction, since you've added one, transaction number is not 2, you're getting row number 2. When you process it again, add one, becomes 3. When it comes there, it's getting row 3, and so on. So that's how it works. So first thing first, we have to log message to follow best practices, so that we are in the get transaction state, that we're getting the transaction item. And after that, we get transaction item. Here, this is a getting queue from the orchestrator. But if you are not using queue, you will replace this activity with maybe get mail message, get read range. So if we go back to this, let me open the workflow. This is the client security hash. What did I use here? Okay, so this is the get transaction data. So first thing, if it is the first one, right? Okay, now look at this. If you look at this, look at how it says here. This is for the queue, but we don't have queue item. So here, what I put is I deleted it because I'm not using queue. So I don't need it. I deleted it. But now, since I'm now using, I think it was Excel I used. Oh, no. Here you actually go to the website and get something from the website. So here is where I am, and if you see, I am navigating to a particular website that I've already opened, which is that ACME login one. So that's what's happening here. So I don't want to go into details about what the workflows are about, but I'll open it and say it. So this is, first of all, navigating to the dashboard. So navigate to dashboard. Yeah, navigating to this URL, go, the dashboard. In case maybe in this, after logging in, I don't know if this is correct. assume it's okay, it's correct. So in case I'm not in the dashboard, let's say I'm here. So when it comes to get transaction data, what it first does is to navigate. That navigate here is not clicking anything, just like changing this. If I go to work items, you can see the URL is this. But when I use navigate, what happens is that it's going to navigate. This is actually an activity. Let me see. I think the name of the activity is navigate something. There's navigate to. So what it does is just from whatever URL it is, it will go to another URL, which is this. And I stored it in the config file. This is it, ACME dashboard URL. So that's the first thing that this is going to get transaction data is going to do. Navigate to the dashboard. Then after navigating, it goes to the work items, because that's where, if you read the this process map, you can see first in login, asset word listing item, select an activity of W15. So for example, this is what I select to get this thing here. This is what I need. So I need to navigate to work items URL first of all. So this workflow is navigating to the work items, which I've also stored here in the config file here. Then after navigating there, what next? It invokes extract data table workflow. So let's open it. So what happens is I use extract structured data table to extract everything here. So it will, after extracting this, it will click next and so on and so on and so on until I get to the last one. So I believe you know how to use the extract data table activity. Okay. You know how to use it, right?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Please,
So
I have
that's
a
what's up.
question.
Okay. Yeah, you can
Okay,
go.
my question is, while you were like developing this RE framework, and you have to run it, test it, and all that. And let's say now this gets transaction data. Definitely to have like saved some of those data somewhere. So how
Yes.
do you like have to manually delete those data, or
If I
how
get
do you go about it? So
your
yes,
question,
like
if we
the
are
data,
running,
yeah, yes.
okay. So
Yeah,
you
go
see,
ahead, I'm listening.
okay, I think what you mean is, so since I'm building so many workflows, how will I test each of these workflows individually, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is yeah, like when I build this, let me not use this. Let me use navigate to work items. Instead of putting in ACME, blah, 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 which is got from the config file, I will come here, copy this URL itself, and put it here, and now run this. So if it runs perfectly well, no error, then I know that if it also gets the URL from this config file, there will be no error. So navigate to dashboard also. I will put the actual URL here and so on. Extract data table. I will navigate to this place myself. Then I'll run this workflow. Then to see if it works. And I will just put a demo output data table here and output data table to the terminal and see if what it was extracted was correct. So you do everything
Okay.
manually just to confirm
All
if
right,
there's
thank
no.
you.
Yes, you're welcome. So to continue, after doing this, after extracting data table, then I filter. Remember, the next thing says here in the PDD, it says I want to select an activity of type W15. So if it's not W15, I don't need it. So I'm guessing that's what this is doing. Yes. If the type is W15 and the status is open. So it's just, this is part of the activity. This is something I built or I included in the get transaction data workflow. So this changes depending on what you want to do. So after that, I assign, because I know that after filtering the data table, then I want to find out what the total transaction number is, right? I do that by just using data table dot rows dot count. So you can see IO transaction data is here, is an argument that is stored here, and is of the type data table. I think this one, out transaction item, by default, okay, let's go to the default one I opened and let's see it. You see that it's a queue item by default. The argument type is queue item. But because I know I'm not using queue, I'm using Excel, I will change it to data row, since every transaction item should be a row. So I'm the one that will change it myself. So there are some things you need to change in this argument depending on what you are building. The in config will always be a dictionary. Transaction number will always be an integer. The other things you don't need to change. But for the transaction item, it depends on what you are doing. So I assign the total transaction number to the IO transaction data dot count. But remember, this is not just the get transaction item. This is only done. All this thing is done if this is the first run. Because let's say, remember this get transaction data is to get, let's say after I've extracted all this and I've filtered those with W15, I have 20 rows. And so after I've gotten it, after getting that data table, I mean, it will not make sense to come here and still navigate to these websites and now see extract it again. I've already gotten the data table, so I don't need it. So this will only run if I hold transaction data, which is the data table here, if the data table is empty. If the data table is empty, that means this is the first time I'm running it. And after running it, I should get the data table. So it will no longer be empty again. So after running these ones, it will not come here again. What will happen is it will go and get the transaction item, which is a row of a data table. So this is saying if the total transaction, so that this is something that I built myself. So you always have to, annotate well. Is it annotate? Or name your activities well. So if the total transaction number has not been reached, meaning, remember I read total transaction number here. So let's say total transaction number is 20, for example. If it is not 20, if this in transaction number that remember I told you that the process state or process workflow, after processing each row, it will add 1 to the transaction number so that it knows which number it is. So that means if the maximum, let's say the total transaction number I read here is 20, for example, is 20, then I don't need to get any row again from it because the number of rows have already been exhausted. So if it is equal to it, I will set out transaction item to nothing to say that this is the last item. Now we've already done everything. Now go to the end process states. But if not, it should go and get a row. So if you see what is there, let me open it. Our transaction item is set to the name of the data table row -1. And I'm putting -1 because remember that data table start from 0, not 1, but our transaction number start from 1. So when it's actually processing transaction number 1, in transaction number will be 1, but the row I want to go and get is going to be 0. That's why I'm putting -1 here. I believe you already know that, but this is just to get, this is what I used to get the row. So the name of the data table .rows .item. If you don't know what to do, if you just know that, okay, I want to get a row of a data table, but you don't know what to use here, you can just go to Google and search for it. You always find the answer on Google. So that's basically what happens in the get transaction data. So the common here to get each data is not coming here to get data table. No, if it's coming here to get the data table, then it's basically just a linear process because it's not repeating itself. So it's coming here to get each row of the data table. So that's for this.
Let me go back to the default one so we can see what's next. So after doing that, after the one that I added now, so then we come back to here. If this is an optional step, and this, I don't think I use this. Okay, let me see. No, I didn't. You say I didn't change anything. This is where you add some other strings. So you can edit this and say you want to add some other transaction fields. You can come here and add it. See that here, what was added in out transaction ID is the time. Now dot to string. That's the time or whatever is happening now. Now that's the time now. Dot to string. You can also filter it to only include only time or date and time. So this is option. You can see this optional step can be used to include more information about the transaction item and blah blah blah. But I didn't use it. So it's just this is what exactly comes with the template. You can see it's the same thing here in the default one we created. Nothing was changed. So this is optional. If you are not using it, you don't just edit it. So that's that for the get transaction data here. And we are done. If there's an exception, let's check that. If there's an exception, you first of all, if you cannot get a transaction data, you first of all, that is if you've set it get transaction data error in the config file. Let me open it better. But I didn't. But if someone has done that, if you set the log an error that should be logged, if get transaction data workflow fails, then that will be outputted to the terminal and you add this. So it's like, for example, if I already set the error as maybe transaction number failed, let's say that is what I said, the one will be outputted is transaction number failed, whatever transaction number is, let's say 3, transaction number 3, then dots the exception, that the message of the exception that actually occurred, then the source of the exception. So that's what will be outputted if an error occurs during get transaction data. And then we also set the get. So this is another question that can come out. What is going to happen if an error occurs if an error occurs in the get transaction data workflow? Sorry, if an error occurs in the get transaction data workflow, what happens? It's going to go to the end process. How do I know that? Because in the exception happen, we set transaction item to nothing. And remember that if transaction item is nothing, it goes to the end process. So that means if an error occurs in get transaction data workflow, by default, what the RE framework this set is that it should go to end process. So that's all about the get transaction data states. Before moving on to process, is there any question? Any question? I'm going to assume that there's no question.
Wait,
Okay.
testimony, please. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Okay.
Yes,
All right. Now, definitely, I know there are questions, but maybe don't maybe they don't know which one to ask which not, because I know that the speed is quite much. But definitely,
sorry.
I can say this on their behalf. I know there are questions. Okay, so but of course we have the room to replay. So we can just go ahead with the transaction. Okay, you are done with the get transaction state.
Yes.
Get transaction data state. You want to move to the process. Okay, and
yes.
then the all right. Okay, so while you are going to the third one, and so okay, you just now also need to help to emphasize the files that are relevant to each state. You've talked about them indirectly, maybe with not much emphasis, but so while you are going on, still you still need to emphasize the files that are needed in all of those states and how they work.
Okay.
Yeah, it will not be too
Yeah.
much. Thank you.
Yes, I understand. Yes, sir. Okay. So moving on, or before we move on, if we come and check the files are stored under framework. That's the default. Maybe I should go to the default one that we created.
Sorry, don't let that hinder the next thing you wanted to do.
No, no. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah, yes. Okay, I understand. So if you look at the process, these are the processes that are in the total transaction RE framework, I mean. And we've looked at three, I think. We've looked at the get transaction data workflow, we've looked at init all applications and init all settings and kill all processes. So you can see init all applications and init all settings, they're inside the init states. I've always seen them there.
and the kill off
Yes.
process.
Yes, we also saw kill all processes in the init states. But we are still going to see it, we might still see it in another state. But kill all process is also in the init states. But we will see it in another state. Then there is the get transaction data, which is only in the get transaction data states. So these are the four we've seen. So as we are moving on, we'll see the others and we'll see where and in which states they are in. So let's move on to the process transaction now. We'll look at all these transitions later. So in the process transaction here, so this is where after getting the transaction item from the get transaction data, this is where it will now be processed in the process transaction states. So the first thing is we assign business exception to nothing. So we've seen system exception and we've seen business exception. So basically business exception is one that is defined by the user. For example, let's say the business exception here is if I'm just in a default example. Let's say if we are getting queue items, right, from a particular queue, and then now if the business exception is that maybe, or what I want to happen is that if the queue item is greater than 5, then I should not process it. Then that's an example of business, something that is set by the user or the owner of the process. But system exception is something that happens in the execution of the process. So now the first thing when we enter here, okay, let me go to the default one so we can see what is actually there. So you can see business exception is there, setting business exception to nothing. Then we evoke process workflow, which is process workflow is not part of the frameworks, but is actually another workflow on its own, where main is inside the actual directory that the RE framework is stored. So if we open this now to see what is there. So let me go here and do this one, the default one. If I open it like so, then I can see that it say according to best practice, put a comment so that this is where that the process is starting. Then we invoke the steps. So this is empty, right? So we are the one that will now come and add what you want. So remember, we are getting one transaction item, and that transaction item is a row of this data table that has been extracted, that is W15. For example, that will be this here. So it's going to be WIID, description, type, and so on. Basically the row. So what happened is we set WIID to the in transaction item dot item one dot to string. That's a setting into the first column. That's the WIID here. So let me go back to the extract work items data table. And no, I cannot see it. Sorry. I was thinking I'll be able to see the, okay, I can't find it. The rows or the column names that are assigned, but I can't find it. So basically, the WIID, this is it here. In the extracted workflow is number 2, the second column. So here we are getting it. We're getting that WIID of the transaction item. So let's say this is the item that is being processed, then this is what WIID will be: 828999984. And after that, I am invoking another workflow. Also, yes, so the workflows that you build after this, the input and output is going to be held here. Let's say you have some input and output data, it should be held on that data. Then the workflow that you build, you can put it anywhere. You can put it where this main and process is. But you can also, just to make your work look neater, you can put it in a particular folder. So you can see everything that relates to SHA-1, that anything I'm getting with on that SHA-1 website is here. Anything I'm getting from ACME websites, all the workflows that has to do with ACME is there. So this one is not, if we go back to the defaults, you can see there's nothing like ACME here. There's nothing like SHA-1 here. This is something that I added, but you can see data is there. You will see the input and the output. You will see the config file. These ones are there. But the processes that I now built myself, just to, for the process, for the total RE framework process, I added it to these 2 folders, ACME and SHA-1. So this is one of them. After getting the WIID, let me open the workflow. So from the PDD, you can see after selecting this, you select client details on details page. So let's see how I did it. So the next thing is, again, this is what this workflow is trying to do is to select client details on details page. If we check here, you can see open the details page of the selected activity to retrieve the client's details. So that is what this workflow is doing. After getting, you see, for each activity of W15 type, perform the following steps. So after getting the ID, each of the ID, what it's going to do is, first of all, navigate to that dashboard. I've opened this file. This is it here. Then invoke the navigate to WI's file. So you see, I did not just jump pack everything. And this, I did not know to do this actually. It's not like I knew it. I sent 3 files, and if you open the class calculate client exercises, maybe if you want to do this on your own, you will see that they actually broke it down how you should do it. They told you all the files to create and what you should do. So look at the one that I just opened. Is the navigate to work items work folder. This is it here. It navigates to work items page. So they did this so that if this is your first time, you should know how you should build RE framework. So that next time you know this is how you should do it. So you break it down. This is something that Mr. Julius does very well. You break it down into different workflows so that it will be easier to understand by someone else. And then your workflow will look neat. Instead of putting like 50 activities in just one workflow, you break it down into different workflows and then now invoke the workflow into maybe the main or another sequence. So you can see we're talking about the navigate to WI details. So it's navigate to WI's file again. So that is what this navigate to WI details is doing. It's going to, first of all, go to dashboard, go to WI's file, then just according to best practices, it's going to navigate to WIID. It's going to put a log message that I'm navigating to something. But this is something that I figured out. In order to, if I come here, right, what they want me to do is to click here. For each of these items of type W15, I'm to click here. Let me open it in a new tab. I'm to go here and get something from here. this is what I'm to get. But then I noticed that for each of these, if I go here to this another one, just a random one, and open it in new tab, if I compare this and this, I can see that the only difference is actually the WIID. This is what I'm saying, the WIID here is 829000080. That is this 829000080. And for this one, the WIID is this, and it's also the same thing here. So the only thing that happens is to this particular URL, this one here, from here to here, they added the WIID, and then you go to this page. So instead of, because what someone else might have done is to now to go back to this page and click this for each of the WIID. But you see, that will take time. So instead of doing that, what I just did was to just append this thing here, this acme-test.uipath.com/work items, and now add the WIID that I've gotten from, as you can see, I assigned it here. Sorry. I assigned it somewhere. Oh, in the process, yes. This WIID, I passed it into this workflow as in WIID. So you can see I now added it. I navigated to this URL, which is stored also in config.slxx, plus this one. So when you are building something, or you come across something like this, you can, investigate not just only URLs, you can investigate selectors. For example, let's say you are to do the same thing for something on the website, and then I noticed that for 1, 2, 3, there's something like 1, 2, 3, 4. I noticed that the only thing that is changing is that 1, 2, 3, 4. Then that means I know that to navigate to one, I will copy a default URL and add one to it. So instead of going there with UiPath and clicking, I will just use navigate to, which will be faster. Because first of all, opening a browser is going to take time. Going there to click, there might even be errors in the way. So if you find something that is more error prone, it is less error prone and then efficient and consumes less time, it is better to go for that option. So basically, please don't be confused with these things I'm explaining. I want to actually explain how the RE framework works, but this is what I built. So I'm just using it to explain it. So basically, back to what I was saying. Sorry. After getting the WIID, we go to this link here, and from the PDD, they asked us to get something. Let me see. They asked us to retrieve client details, and that client details is this. I think the client ID. Someone talking. Okay. We have to retrieve the client ID. I think account number, something else. Let's see it exactly. They broke it down here better. Okay, we have to receive the client details. Okay, I think that's just the client ID now. The client ID. Then after retrieving it, after going here, you retrieve it. Then you invoke what I did was to invoke extract client type info. So this is the workflow that is extracting what they asked us to extract. So if I open it, I think it's not just the client ID. Okay. I extracted the client ID, client name, and client country. So those are the three things we have to get: client ID, client name, and country. Where would they get that? Let me see. Trying to look for where they get the client's name and country. Let me see. Okay, this is it. Client ID, client name, and client country. Well, it has changed now. Oh, this is not it. Sorry, this is it. Client ID, client name. So this is for W15. If it's not W15, you won't get it. So that's where I got confused. So for WI5 items, it includes ID, name, and country. So this is where we get it.
this workflow gets it, and then after getting it, then we now remember from the PDD. Sorry if you don't remember, let me go back. From the PDD, after getting client details, you have to go to sha1.com and enter the correct formula using client ID, name, and country. So if we go back here, this is what we are supposed to enter: the WIID, then dash client name, dash country, and click hash. So that's what we have to do. And so that is what this formula is. See that is client ID plus dash plus client name plus dash plus client country. So that is what the hash formula is. Then we now invoke sha1.online process. This is where we go and get the hash that is formed. So what we do is we type that thing. That's client ID plus client name plus country, and we click hash. Then after clicking hash, we now get this thing here using get text. And after doing that, this is it, get hash text. Then we pass it back into the process workflow. Then the PDD says after getting it, we should now retrieve client security hash. After retrieving it, go back to work item details and open update work item. So we have to go back here and click update work item, and now drop the, let me see, click completed, I guess, and drop the hash here that we got from the sha1.online. So that is what that's what this other workflow is doing here. This invoke sha1.online process hash. So this one is getting the hash, then this is now updating it. So if I open it, see first click update work item. So you say I'm not navigating because it's already opened. Click update work item. Then this is basically the workflow to update it. Then after we are done with the process, because if you come back to PDD, said go back to work item details, open this, set the status to completed, and that's it. So then when after this has now run finish, process data has run, everything the process workflow, sorry, has run. If we go back to main, after process workflow has run, we are done with the process states. So we can see the exceptions. If a business exception was is caught, first of all, we set business exception to the exception, or system exception, we set it to the exception. So this is just the process state. That's what that happens. It processes each transaction. After let's say transaction number 1 has been processed, what will happen is that if you look at the transitions, we have 3. First one, let me move it. This is the first one. If it's the system exception. Second one, sorry, let me move this one. If there's business exception. So this is another question that can be asked. If there is system exception, well, what will happen? If there is system exception, to go back to the initialization and init all the applications again. If there's a business exception, it does not mean error occur. That means we don't want to process that data, or whatever the user or the owner of the process sets, then we get the next transaction data. So the only 2 transitions that will lead to the get transaction data from the process transaction is sources. That means if the process workflow works fine, perfectly, everything ran, or if there's a business exception, it goes to the get transaction data. So that's the question that can be asked. But if there's a business system exception, I mean, it goes to the initialization. Okay. Then after the process transaction, we move to the end process states. End process state. Let me open this. So what happens here is, let's go to the default one, of, just so we can see it.
So the only thing here is invoke close all application workflow. So it's the end is to close everything that we've opened because we are done. So if you check the one I also did, is just the close applications workflow. So if I open this now, so if this close all application workflow is here, close all application. So we see the close out application, we've seen another one. Close out application runs inside the end process state. So what happens here is, let me go to default first and open it. So you can see is blank. So you're the one that is going to add the applications that should be closed. So you see here I invoked two files, ACMA close file and SHA1 close file. So what will happen when this runs? It closes the browser for ACMA, closes the browser for SHA1. And that is that about the close all applications. Let me go back to main. So after closing all applications, if there's an exception, it logs, that means applications could not be closed. And we see applications failed to close gracefully. And if it does not close using the normal method, what will happen is we now go to kill all process. So you can see kill all process is in the init and the end process. So and kill all process is invoked in the end process if close all application workflow did not work. So let's open. Okay, I think we've opened it already. So we just, since Chrome is the only thing I'm using, so it's only kill Chrome process that is there. So we just want to ensure that all the processes, all the applications we opened closes. So we kill it. So, and that is, let me go back here. That is for the end process, basically. So we've talked about the whole process now. So we can now move on to talk about the transition. So, Mr. Julius, do you want to talk about the transitions?
Hello. You say what?
Yeah, I said, do you want to talk about the transitions?
Okay. All right.
Do I send the file to you or you will use my screen?
Okay, let's use your screen. But why before I talk about the transition, I think I just have to ask the class. Please, can you just take the screen, take it out. Let me ask the class question. So far, you've been seeing the ROE framework and the display, how the testimony has been going through it. I just want to ask, how many states are there in the ROE framework?
Two, three, four.
Hello?
Hello.
I can't hear you. I think somebody's voice, somebody's, uh-huh. Okay. I can't get the answer. Hello, but when Lady Testimony was talking just now, I could hear her voice loud and clear.
Hello?
I'm not hearing
Oh,
anybody.
yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
No, me, I want answers from you
Yeah,
now.
first states.
There are 4 states.
Okay, first, sir.
Okay, good. That's good. Then, in that 4 states, where can we actually get, which of the states, position of the states, can we get the get transaction states?
I don't get the question.
I think the second stage.
You think, okay, that's good. All right, I can see that we're actually following. So all of these states are the states. It's just get to understand that, like testimony said, it's just a framework. It's not cast on stone. So you can, but following that framework makes you in the standards of developers. So that's why you can build your isolated workflows and then bring them and start plugging them into this state. Each of the states can perform different things, like the testimony has told us. From the initial state, which reads all your initial files, close or kill any process that needs to be killed, then load every document or every readable files you want to read. All of them comes in that initial files. If you want to also push your content to the orchestrator, they also come there, and they all go to the queue in the orchestrator. Then in the get transaction state, we could see that yes, you can either retrieve those content from the orchestrator as a queue item, or we will be able to get the data from a table. But at this time, we're getting just a row. If we're going to get it from a table, we're going to get a row from the table. It is that queue item or the rows that will pass into the process state, process transaction state, and that transaction state is processed. And when we finish with that process state, it is recorded that that transaction is done, and we look back to the get transaction state to go and get the next one process. And if there's no more to process at the point of getting to transaction state, if there's no more, we'll see that it moves to the end transaction state. Now, I haven't said that, which gives us the first state. My question is, how many transitions are in the ROE framework?
Seven.
I believe by now some persons are already looking at their own system. It's just that I can't see everybody's system. Hello?
Seven,
Hello,
sir.
sir.
I think I will suspect the class, because it takes time for the class to answer the question. It means
Network.
many of us are already putting
Once
on our.
I try to unmute myself now, it's going to unmute on time.
You say?
Maybe I'll just. I'm unable to unmute myself on time.
Okay, you didn't even unmute yourself on time. I'll still take that
Yes.
as okay. So what's the answer?
7.
7, sir.
Okay, 7. That's good. So these are likely questions we may just overlook while we are looking at the ROE framework, and they could just come out from our questions. Now, each of them, like late testimony has explained, the transition is what actually helps us. Like yesterday, we were talking about the transition, and we saw that we can transit from one state to another based on some condition. And those conditions are what the testimony has just placed there on the screen. And based on any of the conditions, they move to the next state. So, the testimony, can you share your screen now so that we'll just look at those transition states? I'll just be concerned on the transitions, just to explain detail on the transitions. Or can anybody open it or a screen, share a screen, their screen? Only
Sorry,
the
I'm
arrow
back.
framework. Okay, all
Sorry,
right, thank you.
I'm back. I'll share it now. Sorry.
Okay, wanted the ROE framework diagram.
Okay.
All right.
Is it?
So we could, yes, thank you. So we could see this ROE framework. All of them, we'll just look at the transition, something we did yesterday. All these transitions are good for we to understand. The first transition from the initial state is that while we are loading our document on this the transitional state, in this transition state, we can kill any process we know is going to hinder our document. Let's our project. Let's assume we want to write a project that will log into the web and get data from the web. If I must do that, and maybe the web application I want to use is Chrome, I would prefer to kill any Chrome that is open, so that may not mislead my robot. You know, computer is giggle, that's garbage in, garbage out. So I'll have to kill it there and try to load all my configuration files or whatever files I want to load. Something may happen while trying to load the file. And if anything happens, we only have two states. Is either the file loads successfully or the file fails. So if the file loads successfully without an error, so the error we'll be looking at there will be seeing system error, or there is no system error, because if we're writing a code, there's tendency that the code should read. But anything that will make that code not read means that it is either triggered by system error. Maybe the file we were trying to read is no longer in the position it's supposed to be. So that could throw up an error. Like I said, the ROA framework is to handle errors. It's for best for error handling and for performance sake. That's why it was designed. Now, for a error handling, if anything fails, instead of your program to crash, it will just go straight to the end process. And we could see that flow from the diagram, how it moves to the end process. And the other transition, I'm only looking at the transition part. I'm not going to be talking about detail inside the state because the testimony has dealt with that. Then, if we read successfully, we get to the get transaction state. On this get transaction state, we see how only two things can happen. It's either there is transaction to be processed or there is no transaction to be processed. If there is transaction to be processed, that transaction will move to process transaction flow state. But if there is none to be processed, meaning I have finished processing all the transaction, then the transition will lead that project to the end transaction state. So it means that there are only two states that takes us to the end and there are only two transitions that takes us to the end transaction state. One, when there is system error that comes from the initial state, and two, when we have all our transactions being processed and not to be processed. Only these two will take us to the end transaction state. Then, if we still have transaction to be processed, it takes us to the process transaction state after getting that transaction. In this state, we have another three other transitions from this state. One is when that transaction we process is very successful. We go back to the get transaction state to take another one and run. That's one of the transition states. Another one is a business error. The business error is not like an error. It is a coding. Maybe you have done your coding and you say, we want every student that is above 16 years to go through this exam exercise. Anyone that is below 15 years will not go through this exercise. So in that case, if you put that as your transition state, it means that anybody that is below 15 years is a business error. It should not be processed. So that is what we'll tag as a business error in this context. So it is you that define what your business error will be, what kind of transaction you will not process. That's what comes into this condition, this transition of business error. So don't take it as an error, but it's a developer-defined error. Then, finally, that business-defined error takes us to, if there's business-defined error from the transaction state, it takes us back to the get transaction state. Take note of that. So only two states from the process transaction state will take us to the get transaction state. One, when it is successful, and two, when there's a business error. Okay, Mr. Joe, you can raise your question.
Okay, sir. My question is, okay, from what we have seen, the RE framework basically it groups together similar processes. Then you can pick from those processes. So how do you signify the process? Do you like use variables or what? So it will not pick a wrong process in each of those states.
Okay, RA framework is not like grouping similar processes. No, it is your project definition. Now, before defining or before designing a project, you have your concept from the initial build from beginning to the end, and each of your projects will have different steps. Now let's take it for example that's why I started by asking us, these answers are very many now. I started by asking us how many states are there. There are 4 states. Now, when you design your project, you design it from beginning to end. And each of these your projects, a stage will always fall into one of these 4 processes. Let's start with the initial state. First, you want to initialize your documents, your variables, your configurations. So anything you want to initialize, like let's assume I want to fill a form and I have list of users in an Excel file that I want to use to fill a Google form. What I will first of all do is to first of all kill all processes. I want to initialize. I'll kill all processes. Then I will read my Excel file and save it somewhere. That could be in the initialization point, right? Then let's assume after getting that process in my stage, I'm designing my project now. After getting that design, I have done my initialization. I will say, okay, how do I retrieve each row as a get transaction? But remember I told you that in get transaction state, you only get either a queue or a row containing only the transaction information you want. You may have bulk of information, but at that get transaction stage, you only need one item from it. So I will design a project that can help me loop around my table and return only one row at a time. Now, once that row is given to me, that's all I need in the get transaction state. Then I'll then take that get transaction state and report it in the process transaction. Let's assume in that row now I've gotten your name out, that is you. I want to check the age of your age in that Excel. If you are above 15 years, do this. If you are not, do that. So in the process transaction, I will do all my algorithm in a workflow looking at that row that I have gotten and do my mathematics around it. Look at the age, okay, it's 18 years and go on. So with that simple analogy, I have been able to share my project from beginning to end into this ROA framework. And if error happen in any of the way from where I was initializing to where I finished the transaction processing, it then takes me to all of those stages that are there. So I think that's the simple answers to that.
All right, Mr. J.
Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's me. Yeah, I would have said that what you are saying should be demonstrated with the screen that was on. I mean, testimonies screen. Well, but no problem. The Sylvester is raising his hands.
Okay.
But so subsequent questions should be you could handle subsequent questions by showing us what obtains on the RE framework.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir. So I think before we answer Sylvester's question, I don't know if I was able to answer is it Joe's question? I think I didn't pick up the name that has raised that question. So can you signify if the answer is okay by you?
Yes, sir. But well, yes, sir. That was another question I had.
Okay, thank you. So Sylvester Adediba, you raised up your hand, so you can raise your question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Hello, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Please, yes, there is this particular question that has been bothering me concerning this project that we are the framework. I believe this is state machine. Abby?
Yes, we said that yesterday. Yes.
Hello, sir.
Okay, maybe your network is lagging or mine is lagging. Yes.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yes, and according to what we were told, they said that it has two states, which is the state and the final state. But there is a question that you are just asked, that how many states that this particular project has, in which we answered for 4 states. My question is, are we going to consider the final state as part of the state, or the state is different from the final state?
Okay, very good. I like that question. In this case, we are considering everything as a state, whether a final state or a state. We are considering all of them as a state in this case. But because they want to actually let you know that there is a kind of state that is different from the normal state, that is why they were teaching you the state machine, telling you that on a normal state can actually give you different transition, and a normal state cannot exist on its own without a transition. There must be a transition. If you look at the ROA framework you have here now, the get transaction is a normal state. The the initialization is a normal state. The process transaction is a normal state, but the end transaction is a finite state. So all of them together in my question, in this contest we are doing now, we are not narrowing the nature of state machine. Rather, we are expanding the scope of ROA framework. So there are 4 states. You cannot tell them that we have 3 states and 1 final state in ROA framework. You will fail that answer. Hello? Hello?
Hi, yeah,
So any further question? So in the absence of no.
So okay, now since I think I'm okay. Okay, so now since there are no questions, I want to assume there are no questions, or maybe it's because of the way I came the other time. That's why that's why maybe there are no questions. I don't want to think so. But then let me be specific now and ask individuals. In no particular order. So, Shehu Ojo Akomolafe, how is it now? Joe has asked his question. I don't know. I don't know where I would place him. Emmanuel, Matthew Ewauche.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I think I will go and study more on the RE framework. I will go and study more on the RE framework and practice what Ms. Tessie has put us through. So I have to put that into action.
Okay. All right, Matthew. Is Matthew still around? Yamotayo Kende.
Question.
Okay, so that means it's a good time then. All right, so I was thinking that we'll spend more time. Testimony has helped us to do it in the chicken way. I don't know if you understand that joke. Yes, she accepts in to summarize the whole thing. Okay, all right then.
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right. So, who else is there? I know I can see other. I can see other persons. I'm just so particular. Okay, Amarachi, you are still around now. I want to hear from you. Oh, she's not around.
I'm around, sir. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay then. All right, that's okay then. So, uh, that means it's a good way to end the class. All right, I never knew the time would be this sufficient. I never knew we'll have extra time as it were. I was already hanging that we may have to. It may take us into the
I was
into
also
course.
thinking there are some areas I was expecting the class to ask question around, but they are not actually asking question around, and I don't know whether they already get the understanding. So we could just ask the class question around those areas and see how the flow is. I expected their questions to come from there.
Maybe okay. So we should still wait for the class a bit.
Okay, I think we will have to ask the class questions now.
Okay.
Okay. Why what the last part of the transition point is the system error. Now we could find out that there are two system errors that could happen. One is on the initialization system error, and the other one is from the process transaction error. But when the one that happens from the process transaction error, process transaction state happens, he doesn't go to the end transaction process. So what does he do and how or why?
Which type of error?
Which
Business
type of
or
error?
system?
System error is system error.
Let
No,
me use
okay,
exception.
okay.
System goes
Yeah, I
to
say go back to get transaction data.
business goes to get transaction.
I think all of you are wrong there. System error,
System
not
Yeah.
error,
business
if it is
error.
a system error, if
Then
it is a
it's
system
in it.
error, it goes back to
It goes back
that's
to
initialization stage.
initialization.
Because that's the stage where it prepares the application, it
Okay,
checks
you are
maybe
still not
the
answering my
problem is from,
question, though. You are still not answering my question. But at
maybe you
least
should
you
ask.
are, for these last answers you gave, they are 50% to my question. So the answer to my question, but you have not answered it. There
Maybe you
are
should
two system
ask.
errors on the ROE framework. When the system error occurs from the initialization, it goes to the end process. But when the system error occurs from the process transaction, it goes to the initialization. Why and how?
Yeah, if I can try. The reason why it goes to the initialization stage is to re-prepare or recheck for if all the settings and all the applications are intact. Because if it were to be a business error, it will go back to get transaction state. That means it will skip that particular transaction and go and pick another one. But if it is a system error, it goes back to initialization stage to check the configurations. Maybe there is any app that is open that it needs to close. Maybe anything that deals with the system, So before it now goes back to get transaction and repeat that process.
Wow, that's 80%. Well, okay. Why 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 is the system error from the process transaction going there and the one from initialization is going to the end process?
Yeah, after initial, if it fails at from initialization to get transaction, if it fails there, it will go back to end process because it will end the whole thing there. but if it is from processing to initialization, this thing is in process already. So it
All
goes
right.
back to reconfigure the application.
All right. I think this is that's bright questions. That's bright question. I don't know whether the house also supports the answer. That's bright answer. Do we support the
Yes,
answer?
sir.
All right, that's good. So I just want us to get the concept. The truth is that for your understanding right now, you may not know how to fully use it, but this is the ROE framework you meet in the real world. Your individual projects you build, like this one we push. Which project have you built in this class? From start to finish. Have you built any project? Hello?
Not really, but we've worked on individual
Yes,
projects.
sir.
Yeah, I can hardly hear
Not as
that voice. It's like somebody is talking, but I can hardly hear that
okay.
person.
I said not really, but we have built projects individually,
Okay,
but not
good.
as a class.
Yes. The project you build individually, you can also put that same project, even as small as a project, can come into ROE framework. If the project needs to repeat itself over and over to process any transaction, not just one way. Maybe you have to read 2 times 1, 2, 2 times 2, 4, up to 12. That process can still be done in this ROA framework. So ROA framework can do from simple to complex tasks, but usually it was designed for complex tasks. Any task you can think of, how complex it is, ROA framework is there for you to do that. So if you know your normal sequence cannot, like I said, sequence is basic. That cannot build it, cannot solve it. You use your flowchart, and if flowchart cannot solve it, then you use your state machine. And this is just a replica of a state machine. How it goes. Okay, having said that, I still want to ask another question. The configuration file. Why is the configuration file necessary? Or why is the config file necessary? And where can I find the config file?
It can be found in the initialization stage.
Wow, that's great. I can find it in the initialization stage. So why is it necessary? And why is the configuration file having 3 parts? And what are the basics of those 3 parts?
The 3 parts are just keys and value. That's in dictionary form. And also description.
Okay, can somebody share a screen and show us the configuration file so we can all work with that? All right, it's like the class is I think we can end the question here. So I can actually hand over to Mr. Ebenezer. So
Hello,
that
sir. Hello,
Ready to start.
hello,
hello,
sir.
hello.
Yes, sir. I said I would have loved if you could do a very simple, maybe very simple project to show us, but I know the time is not on our side. Actually, it would have been a very good thing for us to see. Actually, just a very simple project that will just demonstrate this, what you have taught
Yes,
us.
yes, that would have been good, but time will not permit me. You know, when I'm talking, I actually don't train. We interact, and I found out that anytime I come to your class, something they would have done in 30 minutes, I'll be using like 2 hours to do it. So if I jump into this one you bring now, I might take your other 1 hour again just to solve that problem.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So please pardon me. Hello. Any other thing we can just talk about other than me just demonstrating practical stuff here? Okay, if there's none, I think I'll just have to accomplish what Mr. Chairman said, let's see one basic one we can do. Okay, let me leave the class first for Mr. Ebenezer to handle. So I think that's okay. Mr. Ebenezer?
Yes, you can go. You can go ahead with what Mr. Babalola suggested.
Suggested.
Yes.
So can I see like 5 hands up to support Mr. Babalola? Because this is the concept of only Mr. Ebenezer and Mr. Babalola. Okay, I can see only one hand. So it means the nay wins the vote.
Even Babalola himself has not raised his hand, so it means that just give let there be.
Oh, my hand is up. My hand is up. My hand is up. My hand is up.
So it's still 2 out of the numbers.
Unfortunately, you cannot raise 2 hands here. Some persons would have.
I think the others are raising their physical hands.
All right, I think we'll go with the others. Maybe at another time I may step in again if there may be other time. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
More hands are coming up. More hands are coming up. More hands are coming up.
Say more hands are coming up. I waited for like 5 minutes. I'm still seeing 3 hands.
There is the network.
I think we still have to close. Please consider others. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Much,
Thank you, Mr. Julius.
And testimony.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then I think it would be a good way to end the class. Now, from what I see on screen, are we still together? So.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Under the
yes.
frame,
Yeah,
now, under the example file, the framework folder in the project folder, I can see a number of files that could be invoked at different stages. Okay, so I close all applications. At what state or in which state does it work? We have identified that it needs all applications, it needs all settings, kill all processes. Those ones are applicable in the initialization state. And so where does close all applications, where does it come in?
You need stage and process stage.
Kill.
End process. End process.
Okay, end
process.
End process.
Okay, testimony. We are using your Thank you. All right, then what about the try current transaction, set transaction status? Have I skipped one? Okay, I've skipped get transaction data. I think that has been talked about. I just want to mention the ones that seem not to have been mentioned. The retry current transaction, set transaction status, take screenshots. Where do they exist? Where do they work?
Public process, I think.
So we those are issues.
Okay, sir. We've seen the close all application. So the get transaction data is in the get transaction state. We've seen that the init all application and init all settings in the initialization also. We've seen that. Then the kill all process is in the initialization and in the process transaction. Is it the end process? I mean, in the end process, that's the kill all process. Then the retry current transaction, that's to retry if, for example, it did not work. Remember, in the config file, the maximum number of retry can be set from the config file. So if the maximum number of retry has not been reached, they are going to that retry what's this now? Retry current transaction. Huh? Tell us something.
No, not at all.
Yes, so that is when the retry current transaction will execute. So if the maximum number of retry is set to 0, for example, it is going to be the retry current transaction is not going to work at all. But if you set it to something more than 1, then it's going to run. Then let's open the set transaction status workflow so that we can see it. So the set transaction status runs under the process. So if you see, this is like a flow chart. So we can see stats. If the transaction is successful, it goes to true. If it's not successful, so let me show you where this set transaction is. It's in the process. I'm not here. Yes. If there is business rule exception, you set transaction to business. If there is exception, set transaction to exception. Then finally, you now invoke the set transaction workflow. So when you now come to, that's when the set transaction is going to, it works inside the process. So when you now come to this set transaction, it's part of the transition states. It's going to come here. If it's successful, then it's going to be true. That means, remember, business exception is set. If there is a business exception, that means you say it's going to be set to exception from here. If there is business rule exception, it will be set to exception. If there is system exception, it will be set to exception. So back to this point, if this is saying if business exception is nothing and system exception is nothing, that means both of them are empty. There is no exception. Then that means it's going to come to success. But if both of them is not nothing, that means they are not empty, then come here. If one of them is nothing, just one. If one is empty and one is nothing, so come here also. Then business exception. If business exception is not nothing, that means if there is a business exception, then it is going to come here. There's business exception. If there is no business exception, that means it's a system exception to come here. So now in the sources, let's first check the sources. In the sources, if there is sources, it's going to log a message of sources and do some additional workflows, basically. Do some, if you want to add log field here, but in this one, I don't think I did anything here. That's for sources. Let's see for business exception. Business exception, if there's business exception, it logs a message of business exception and also add additional log fields, but I did not do anything also in that part. And if there is system exception, this is where it will not check. First of all, if this thing that I chose skill retry is just to check if transaction item is not nothing, that means there's actually something in the transaction item, and in transaction item dot get type is a queue item. So this is just to ensure that it is a queue item when it runs. Then if you come here, it will now set transaction number dash 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 is not successful, system exception. So this thing here is not something new. If you go back here, if you go back to business, it's in the templates. You don't have to do it. It's also here. But I just moved it up there for the system exception. So it's just the condition that should be here to check if system exception occurred, and there's a transaction item. That means transaction item is not nothing. Because if it's nothing, then we are not going to do anything with it. So then we add transaction log fields. Then this is now where the retry current transaction that I was talking about is now invoked. So it's still under process, but is under transaction status under process. So this is the retry current transaction, which is under set transaction status, which is under process. So if we open the workflow, so this is where if it to first check, it reads the config file. If you see what is here, say convert dot to int in config max try number greater than 0. It's remember in the config file there was a row that adds the ID of max retry number. So if it is 0, then we're not going to retry it. So if it is 0, if it's greater than 0, we are not going to retry it. If it's less than 0, sorry, we're not going to retry it. But if it's greater than 0, let's say 2, then we're going to retry it. But if it's 0, no retry. So you can see log message, no retry, and you increment transaction number, meaning that we're not going to try to rerun the process. So we increment the transaction number. But if we are to retry it, right? Let's say the max retry is 2. We come here and I say, okay, has the maximum retry been reached? Is this the first retry? So that thing is the IO retry number. That's holding how many times it has been retried. If this is not the first time that a session occurred, it to be 0. So we are saying, is that retry number, is it greater than the max retry number? If it's greater, then that means maximum retry has been reached. We set the retry number to 0 and increments transaction number. Remember, we're incrementing transaction number so that when it goes back to get transaction data, it will get a new row, not the old row. But if maximum retry has not been reached, it is going to come here. So use orchestrator retry. So that means if you are using queue item, it is going to use orchestrator reply. But because we are not using orchestrator retry, it's just going to go here and increment the retry number. But if the if it's orchestrator, what it does do is to go and retry. It is just going to set the increment the transaction number and retry the queue to get the queue item or whatever it was doing with the queue item. So that is for the retry current transaction. So this is where the transaction number for system exception, the transaction number is incremented inside the retry current transaction. But for the remaining, for the others, let me go back to main. Is it main? Okay, it was here. So if there's a system exception, after checking if we should retry it, it will come and take a screenshot where it will be stored in this exception screenshot. If there's any exception, it will take a screenshot. This take screenshots workflow here is also under set transaction status, as you can see. So retry current transaction, take screenshots under set transaction status, and they are all under process. So I mean process states, not process workflow, process states. So then you take screenshots. So let's open the workflow and see what is there. So this is an activity to take screenshots. Now we're taking screenshot of browser. Now this is browser that part where it will be saved, and yeah, and then save it. Can you hear me?
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay. So back to set transaction status. After taking system exception, Then we use close all application. So you can see close all application is not just used in the end process. It's also used in the process, is in the process states if there is a system exception. So it's to close all application before. Remember, Mr. Julius said that from, if you look at me now, let's go back to me. If you look at me, if there is a system exception, it's going back to initialization. So before going back to initialization, what this is going to do is that it's going to first close all the applications before it goes back to the initialization. And if it did not close, what are we going to do? We kill it. So kill all process is also still under process. So I don't know if you are jotting it down because they can ask those kind of questions. So close application, we've seen is under process, we've seen is under what else? We've seen is under end process also. We see is under init states, end process states, and process states. That's close all application. We've seen kill all processes too is also under init end state process. Yeah, we've seen get transaction data is only under get transactions data states. Init all application, init all settings is only under init states. We try current transaction, take screenshot, they are under set transaction status, which is under process states. So that's the states. So if we go back now to main, we are done with the set transaction status, which we got from here. Finally, we have to set the transaction status. So after setting the transaction status now, remember we stopped here, we've checked system exception. It's inside the system exception that the transaction number is incremented. But for success and business exception, it is incremented after. So you can see this is where the transaction number is incremented. So you can see that success and business exception, because after system exception, I mean success and business exception does not go back to init, they go to the get transaction data. But system exception, you can see 7 actions to take care of the error, retry or take screenshots inside the system exception, because it's the one that is actually an error. But business exception is the one set by the business owner or the developer. And yes, so that's that about.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Maybe one more pointing question. It's I think you mentioned that the everything we have in init initialization state, it's surrounded with a try catch, so that if there is any error, it can be caught.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Do we have in other states similar feature?
Yes. If we open get transaction data, we see that we also see a try catch. This is it here before it gets the transaction data, so that if an exception is caught, it can log it. Then also in the process state, we also see a try catch. This is the try catch. Oh, sorry, this is get transaction. This is the try catch here before invoking the process workflow. And also the end process. Does the end process have? Yes, there's also a try catch, so that if it does not close, it calls the kill all application.
Sorry, what catch do you use?
What?
What catch did you use, or catches?
I don't get. Do you mean in the catch? It's just a general exception for everything.
Yes.
But yes, it's just exception for everything. To catch any exception, doesn't matter which exception. Did you understand that?
Yes.
Is there a system queue exception or something?
Is there a what?
System queue exception, or it just inside the exception do, then you put the queue inside the exception. Now, how do you do that? You don't get what I'm saying?
There are only 2 exceptions there. It's either the business exception or the general exception. That general exception can hold any exception caused by system.
Okay, I understand. All right, I get that. Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I said I got that. I got that. Thank you.
Okay. So
Yes.
thank you, everyone. Yes, thank you so much for this effort, input, sacrifice on all parties. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's just to be a good time to call it a day. Just have 1.5 hours to the close of 29th day, the month of July. All right, so and also it's a weekend. Okay, so the 30 minutes that was given out last week is being taken back this week. All right, so everything is balanced up. All right, so we can close for the day. So thank you and enjoy your weekend. Thank you, Mr. Julius. Thank you, Lady Testimony.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, Lady Testimony.
Thank you,
Mr.
Lady
Julius.
Testimony. Thank you, Mr. Julius. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We appreciate.
All right. Good night, sir.
Good night, Mr. Babs.
Thank you, sir.